Discover the amazing letter from a little girl that transformed a CEO and left him in tears. Jack Thompson's office loomed in a high rise of steel and glass, the pulsating heart of the tech world echoing around him. But as he stared out at the rain streaking down the window, he felt an unease burrowing deep within. Was this all there was? His empire sat atop mountains of numbers and quarterly profits, but loneliness curled around him like a heavy fog. On this fateful, thunderous afternoon, the oppressive silence in his office shattered when a small package arrived. He ripped it open, revealing a handwritten letter inside. The awkward loops of a 10-year-old's cursive twinkled up at him. "Dear Mr. Thompson," it began, "I admire how hard my daddy works for you." Jack's chest tightened, bracing for the inevitable request for a raise or time off, something typical. But then came the shock. The words began to tumble out in an innocent, earnest plea. "I worry he spends too much time at the office, and we don't get to have fun as a family." Mia poured her heart onto the page, the purity of a child's love radiating through every sentence. This simple note drew jagged memories from the recesses of Jack's mind: family dinners, laughter echoing through modest rooms, life before greed had locked him away. Internal conflict stirred. He felt admiration for her bravery, yes, but also a fierce resentment against this reminder of the life he had left behind. The question spiraled: had he sacrificed his own happiness? Had ambition stripped him of the warmth that bound families together? As he wrestled with his racing thoughts, guilt twisted in the pit of his stomach. Mia was right. Every minute he hoarded didn't belong to his success but to his own longing for a past that no longer existed. He clenched the paper, the ink smudging slightly from his trembling fingers. The image of her father working late, eyes glazed, the smile fading, haunted him. The financial pressures he felt, the accountability to shareholders, the relentless pursuit of the next big deal, they all began to feel trite compared to Mia's heartfelt concerns. Yet, how could he introduce flexible hours? His partners would scoff at the idea. Was he risking it all for a child's letter? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension squeezed at him, a vice tightening around his resolve. Jack envisioned the boardroom, the skeptical faces, the dismissive sneers. Could he really lead this change? As he prepared for the annual gathering, an echo of Mia's voice played in his mind, urging action, yet dread pulsed through him. He would stand before his peers and confess, "I've changed." The weight of that truth seemed unbearable. As the clock ticked down to the event, Jack's thoughts launched him into a storm of doubt. Would they shun him? Would he lose the power he had fought to gain? The pulse of a ticking clock matched his internal race, each second echoing louder than the last. Jack was caught in a tempest of anticipation. His next step would not only reveal a new path for him but would also decimate the false persona he had built. The letter burned in his mind, its message a last tie to the warmth he'd lost. What would emerge when he opened the floodgates and stepped into the unknown? The morning of the annual gathering arrived with unrelenting clarity. Jack stood in front of the mirror, studying his reflection. The tailored suit still hung well on him, but he felt like a stranger inside it. Anger, fear, and hope created a collage of unease beneath his skin. He ran his fingers through his hair and straightened his tie, searching for the resolute CEO he used to be. Yet, he faced a new version of himself, one inspired by a child's honesty and untainted perception. Would this man stand up and speak for change, or would he crumble under the pressure to maintain a veneer of invincibility? As Jack entered the boardroom, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Conversations faded into silence as his colleagues turned their gaze towards him. Don, his most trusted ally and the embodiment of everything Jack had worked towards, sat with arms crossed, skepticism reflected in his furrowed brow. Jack swallowed hard, each heartbeat a countdown to a moment that felt both monumental and terrifying. "Thank you all for being here today," Jack began, his voice steady yet laced with a tremor. Immediately, he felt a twinge of uncertainty at the immediate weight of their attention. "I want to address something crucial to our company moving forward." The faces around him remained unreadable, a gallery of expectations and judgments. It was as if he stood alone on an island, waves of doubt crashing against him. He gripped the side of the podium, steadying his thoughts. The memory of Mia's letter flashed through his mind, her faith, her innocence, and the inspiration behind her plea for families to reconnect. Suddenly, those doubts began to melt away, replaced by a flicker of newfound conviction. "I received a letter from the daughter of one of our employees," he continued, gauging their reactions. In it, she expressed concern for her father, who spends too much time at the office. "It struck me powerfully. Are we sacrificing our own families to build this empire?" A murmur spread through the boardroom. Jack paused to let the weight of his words settle. The tension in the air sharpened, but beneath it pulsed an electrifying challenge, the opportunity to change everything. Don leaned forward, a frown deepening. "Are you suggesting we adjust the work hours? How can we maintain productivity if we bend to family obligations?" Jack straightened, meeting Don's gaze head-on. "We need to understand that productivity is not merely measured in hours but in the quality of life we give our employees. Happy employees lead to better results. We can implement flexible hours, work-from-home options, even family days." The vision slipped from his lips, bold and unfiltered. Silence enveloped the room, heavy with disbelief. Jack's heart raced as he braced himself for a backlash he couldn't predict. Yet there was also a strange exhilaration bubbling inside him. Standing up for this idea felt liberating in a way he hadn't expected. He could no longer let fear dictate his leadership. But the aftermath of those words sent ripples through the gathering. Some leaders exchanged glances filled with incredulity, while others wore expressions of intrigue. "What will it cost us?" another board member said, the voice cynical yet curious. Jack's resolve ignited further. "What cost will we pay if we do nothing? The loss of our humanity, the estrangement of our employees from their families? I refuse to lead a company that profits at the expense of our most valuable asset, our people." As the discussions erupted around him, his voice now drowned in the overlap of opinions, Jack's certainty waned momentarily. He was confronting a tidal wave that had built up over his years, and power change was rarely welcomed, let alone demanded. But one thing remained clear: standing firm in this moment was essential to his personal rebirth. Would he steer the company to a new dawn or watch his aspirations crash into the rocks of tradition? One way or another, the tides were shifting. Jack took a deep breath, ready to weather the storm that loomed as he prepared to face the consequences of his convictions. The true challenge awaited just around the corner. Would he be ready to face the fears deep within himself? The conversations surged in the boardroom, voices rising and overlapping in a chaotic blend of skepticism and intrigue. Jack felt the spotlight narrows down to him, a pressure cooker he had willingly stepped inside. He glanced at Don, whose furrowed brow suggested a growing discontent. Jack's instincts clenched around the uncertainty swirling in the air, and he realized that this moment would either propel him forward or plunge him into darkness. "Are you really serious about this?" Don's voice cut through the din, more challenging than questioning. "Flexibility sounds good on paper, but what if productivity drops? We can't make sentimental decisions in a cutthroat market." The room quieted momentarily. Jack steadied himself, looking not just at Don, but at the faces that held the weight of his future. "What if we redefine productivity? It's not just about hours, it's about the passion and energy our employees bring into their work. If they're happy, isn't that an investment worth considering?" The silence returned, thick and heavy. Jack's heart raced. Each second felt like an eternity as he prepared for impending backlash. They were entrenched in a culture built on sacrifice, and he was suggesting a fundamental shift. Would he be the one to break that mold? One board member, Clara, spoke up, her tone measured but curious. You believe we can change the culture, but have you really considered the financial implications? Will clients understand if we seem less focused on results? Jack felt something within him snap into focus. This isn't just about our clients, he began, his voice more confident than before. It's about showing our employees we value them as human beings first. The moment we recognize them as more than just resources is the moment we unlock true potential. Employees who feel cared for will, in turn, care for our clients. The boardroom hummed with energy as murmurs grew louder, opinions colliding like clashing swords. He felt the stakes rise, a mixture of enthusiasm and panic igniting the tension. Jack's heart pounded as he sensed his colleagues grappling with unfamiliar concepts. The battle within himself bubbled up once again, as he questioned if he truly believed in this vision or was he just waving a banner in rebellion against conformity. "Don, when was the last time you felt joy at work?" Jack asked, catching his friend off guard. A flicker of surprise crossed Don's face, but the honesty of the question struck deeper. The moment stretched between them, a tenuous thread hanging in midair. Don hesitated, his defenses cracking slightly. Jack saw it, that glimmer of vulnerability. The room awaited an answer, but before the silence became unbearable, he pressed further, leaning into the moment. What if this isn't just about us? What if a child's perspective, such as Mia's, can ignite change? It may start with one letter, but think of its potential ripple effect on our culture. Are we, as leaders, brave enough to entertain this notion? Jack felt the divide in the room, a palpable shift as the board members exchanged uncertain glances. As they deliberated, Jack sensed that he wasn't the only one wrestling with an evolving understanding of leadership. The fear of change, of yielding to new norms, began to shift ever so slightly. Yet, that inner conflict, the struggle between his new desires and entrenched expectations, remained a formidable opponent. Jack's primal instinct merged with a burgeoning realization: to forge ahead meant dismantling the very foundations he had helped lay. Just as discussions began to stabilize, signaling a deliberation, Jack caught a gleam in Don's eye, a flicker of provocation mixed with hope. It was as if his friend was silently asking, "What next?" Jack inhaled deeply, the weight of his convictions settling like armor on his shoulders. "If we're going to do this, we must do it boldly. This endeavor requires our full commitment, not just the ideals but actual actions. We cannot afford to hesitate, not any longer." In that pivotal moment, with eyes fixed on him, the board's murmurings rumbled like a distant storm. Jack's heart thundered as he ventured to confront the only constancy he feared: what it meant to truly lead in an evolving world. The path was uncertain, but one thing stood clear: he now stood on the precipice of a new venture. It was no longer just about flexibility but about redefining what leadership meant. How far was he willing to go to transform not just the company, but himself? Would he summon the courage to lead this charge, knowing that his convictions would be tested in ways he had never imagined? As the discussions ebbed, a heavy silence cloaked the boardroom, but Jack's mind raced ahead, grappling with the implications of his words, the commitment he had ignited. The rippling energy was intoxicating, yet fraught with danger. He recognized the wake of his challenge and felt both exhilaration and trepidation. Could he truly transform this archaic mindset into a forward-thinking philosophy? Don shifted in his seat, visibly wrestling with a storm of thought. Jack's eyes locked onto his friend's, silently urging him to voice what remained unspoken. When Don finally broke the stillness, his tone trembled between defiance and curiosity. "What if we fail, Jack? What if we go all in and it backfires?" The question was like a jolt. Jack felt it land squarely on his chest. Failure had always paralyzed him, the fear trailing behind like a shadow. Yet, now he understood that every innovation emerged out of uncertainty. "What if we don't fail?" he proposed, challenging not just Don but himself. "What if this is our moment to redefine what success looks like?" He watched as the room absorbed his retreating panic and embraced a wave of intrigue. Some began to nod, resonating with the clarity of his newfound vision, others remained skeptical but no longer hostile. The tide was turning, and Jack could feel it, like a blade cutting through the dense fog of conformity. Emboldened, he leaned in, driven by an urgency to articulate the depths of his beliefs. We need to shift the narrative from one of fear to one of possibility. We're in an evolving landscape, and we can't afford to cling to outdated paradigms. It's time to ask ourselves, what kind of legacy do we want to leave? As he spoke, he realized he was not just pitching an idea, he was embodying the change he sought. Jack could feel a persistent drumming in his chest, a rhythm of hope that pulsed not only in his veins but in the bystanders' expressions. The very foundation of his role as a leader was transforming before him. Each word he uttered tangled deeper into his identity, drawing from a core he had long ignored. Just then, Clara interjected, her voice resolute. Let's say we entertain this concept. What does the support look like? How do we measure success beyond numbers? An opportunity sparked within Jack. We start with a pilot program implementing flexible work hours, gauge employee satisfaction through surveys, and track productivity in creative aspects. Success won't just be measured by metrics but the qualitative feedback from the people who matter most, our employees. The board seemed contemplative as they scribbled notes, weighing the merit of his suggestions. Despite their initial skepticism, cracks began to form in their skeptical facades. Jack understood that if he could keep them engaged, he might guide them toward a radical shift. Yet beneath the surface of this growing enthusiasm lurked a gnawing doubt. What if he had led them into yet another corporate experiment destined to fail? Jack shook the thought off. This was no longer just about the company, this was personal. It was a fight against internal demons and the fear of inadequacy that tinged his every decision. The challenge of upholding this vision now cascaded from his shoulders onto his amalgamation of beliefs and aspirations. The moment demanded that he stretch beyond the comfortable confines of who he thought he was, a cog in the corporate machine, toward becoming a beacon of change. As the meeting approached its end, Jack caught Donna's glance. The barrier between them had fallen slightly. They were allies now, sharing in the weight of what lay ahead. It was no longer a solitary battle against fear, but a shared pilgrimage toward a novel horizon. The meeting concluded with a tentative agreement to explore his ideas further, but doubt crept back in, whispering questions about the path forward. How could he quell his lingering anxiety, knowing that the coming days would demand more from him than he thought he could give? Was he even capable of leading such a monumental transformation? As he left the boardroom, a small piece of paper caught his eye on the table, crumpled and forgotten. Intrigued, he picked it up, unfolding it with care. Scrawled across were childish letters, an innocent note from Mia, the daughter of one of the employees, whose perspective he had invoked earlier. The letter read, "Dear Mr. CEO, can you make our work fun again?" Jack looked at it, his heart constricting in a mix of determination and trepidation. Perhaps it was time to answer that call, not just for Mia, but for everyone who had lost the joy in what they did. In that moment, Jack felt the burden of change solidify into a conviction. The journey ahead would not only test his leadership but reshape the very fabric of who he could become. A familiar fear bubbled up within him. What if he wasn't ready for this? But then he recalled Mia's simple words. That question of fun hung in the air, demanding action. Could he truly embrace the challenge of reconnecting with joy amidst the chaos of corporate life? The time had come to face not just the board, but himself. What would happen if he took the plunge? Jack's journey began anew the moment he stepped outside the boardroom, that crumpled note clutched tightly in his hand. Its childish scrawl seemed to shimmer in the fluorescent lights, a testament to innocence and a call to action. He could feel the gravity of responsibility press against him, heavy as lead yet tantalizingly hopeful. The message reverberated in his mind, "Can you make our work fun again?" As he wandered through the bustling office, he observed faces buried in screens, furrowed brows, and the absence of laughter echoing through the halls. The stark contrast between the vibrancy of Mia's words and the sterile atmosphere weighed on his conscience. This wasn't just about implementing a new corporate strategy, it was about revitalizing the spirit of the place he had long overlooked. Determined, Jack decided to set the stage for his transformation. He retreated to his office, the walls adorned with accolades and statistics from past successes that now felt like relics of an era no longer relevant. Today, they seemed like mocking shadows of a leader who had forgotten the human element of leadership. He would need to break free from these fetters and create a new narrative, one that mirrored Mia's innocent plea. He grabbed a blank piece of paper and began drafting a new vision statement, a manifesto for this evolution. It needed to capture the essence of what he wanted, not just metrics and profitability, but joy, creativity, and a sense of community. Words flowed from him as if the realization had been trapped inside, waiting for the crack to expand. "Let us invite play back into the workplace," he penned, envisioning an environment where innovation flourished alongside enjoyment. Meetings interspersed with brainstorming activities, team events encouraging laughter and camaraderie, light-hearted competitions to foster creativity. The ideas flowed. Encouraged, he took a deep breath and picked up the phone. If he wanted this vision to spread, he needed to surround himself with allies who shared his passion for reinvention. Calling Don was a mirror of sorts. He needed to reflect not just doubt, but potential. "Don, let us meet," Jack said, his voice steadier than he felt. "There is something essential we need to discuss about our direction moving forward." When they met, Jack laid out his vision. The spark of excitement in Don's eyes told him he was on the right track. "Imagine a workplace where people feel inspired to come in every day," Jack urged, his heart racing. "Where creativity isn't stifled but celebrated. We can redefine what it means to be a part of this team." Yet, beneath Don's enthusiasm loomed an air of skepticism. "This sounds great, Jack, but where do we start? How do we implement this without it being seen as just another passing trend?" Jack leaned in closer. "We start small pilot programs that incorporate these ideas, feedback loops to continuously adapt. What if we set a challenge for each team to brainstorm ways to inject fun into their work? If we can truly engage everyone, the impact could be transformative." But the voice of doubt resurfaced. What if these ideas didn't resonate? What if he was overstepping his boundaries? Jack could feel the turmoil rising, but he fought to steady it. After all, these fears were familiar adversaries. Determined, he revised their approach further, ensuring no one would feel pressured. It was crucial they felt ownership in this transformation, that every employee had a stake in rekindling the joy he hoped to rekindle. The next days were enveloped in a whirlwind of activity. Small meetings dotted his calendar, conversations were rich with brainstorming, feedback, and cautious optimism as excitement built. The walls of resistance began to crack, with colleagues sharing ideas that made him smile, shockingly vibrant in contrast to the staid environment they had inhabited. Yet, in the quiet moments alone, Jack grappled with a foreboding sense of uncertainty. In the back of his mind lurked the thought, what if this was simply a delusion? Assembling joy within a corporate structure might feel like an uphill battle that few would rally behind. He reminded himself of Mia's note, the embodiment of hope that resonated deeply with both his aspirations and apprehensions. If he could channel that spirit into his mission, could he truly inspire a shift in culture? With renewed resolve, Jack finalized a presentation for the executive team. He would unveil not only the concept of a fun workplace but a comprehensive strategy encouraging autonomy, inclusivity, and redefining success. As he stood before the mirror that evening, rehearsing his message, he felt a mounting pressure. The stakes had never felt higher. Could he pierce through the corporate fabric of skepticism and emerge a changemaker? Tomorrow promised to be pivotal. The stage was set for a confrontation, but would he find the strength to break through both for himself and everyone relying on him to rebuild the joy? The moment of truth was near, and Jack knew he was racing against more than just time. He was challenging everything he had ever known. The following day dawned, shrouded in an almost electric anticipation. Jack could feel the weight of his decision coursing through him as he made his way to the conference room. Each step felt heavier than the last, the echo of his shoes against the polished floor a reminder of the stakes at hand. The pristine glass walls encasing the meeting room felt like a transparent cage, trapping not only the executives within but also Jack's burgeoning optimism. He sat up early, his hands shaking slightly as he arranged the slides on the projector. These slides were more than mere images and text to him, they encapsulated the very essence of the transformation he envisioned. Yet, every time he rehearsed his opening line in his mind, a wave of self-doubt surged forth. What if they didn't respond like Don? What if they dismissed him entirely? The haunting thought rippled through him, roiling in the pit of his stomach. As the room filled, Jack forced his gaze to remain steady. Executives whom he had regarded with trepidation in the past now took their seats, an unsettling mix of curiosity and skepticism written across their faces. He felt a rush of heat flood his cheeks as he recalled the palpable excitement that had surrounded the small meetings over the last few days. He had seen glimpses of hope, but the scale of this moment was different. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice more confident than he felt. "Today, I want to share not just an idea but a vision." The words poured out, infused with the same fervor that had ignited his initial motivation. He showcased the slides, illustrating the correlation between a joyful workplace and enhanced productivity. But he soon sensed a countercurrent of resistance swirling within the room. Jack could almost feel the eyes of his colleagues narrowing, their skepticism coalescing like a storm cloud threatening to unleash. He pressed on, a mixture of passion fueling his determination. Imagine an environment where creative thinking flourishes, where your team members inspire each other to tread into new territories, he urged, drawing on how this could not only bring joy back but also redefine their benchmarks for success. He scrutinized their faces, looking for signs of engagement, a nod, a flicker of interest, but found only a sea of stony expressions. Jack's heart raced, and panic began to seep in. What he had initially viewed as daring innovation now appeared foolish against the vastness of their entrenched habits. It felt as though he was standing on the edge of a precipice with the world below waiting to catch him or let him fall. Then, he spotted Chris, the COO, whose glare simmered with disapproval. Jack recalled the way Chris often dismissed his ideas in the past, and for the first time, he felt indignant. "Isn't this what we've been longing for?" Jack blurted. "What we lost along the way amid our targets and bottom lines?" His voice cracked slightly. The challenge had slipped from his lips, and he immediately felt a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just about presenting a plan, this was about confrontation, about demanding attention and recognition. Great workplaces don't happen by accident. They require us to choose every day to bring our whole selves, our playfulness, to work, he continued, noticing the collective shifting in the room. "If we don't cultivate joy, we stymie innovation." As he concluded, silence blanketed the room, and the wave of speculation broke over the group. Jack could see the executives exchanging glances, some eyebrows raised in consideration, others knitted in mild confusion. This moment felt critical, he needed to convert their uncertainty into intrigue. Winning them over wouldn't be easy. As the questions started from Chris, pointed and probing, Jack felt the unfamiliar sensation of calculation. He was learning to navigate conflict. Each challenge presented a potential opening, a chance for dialogue rather than opposition. But amid that rising tension lingered a critical realization: this was not just about executing a plan, but embodying it. Inspiration meant engaging with fear, with doubt, not dismissing them as hindrances. Every challenge he faced would break him down, and yet every answer he provided could build him up, piece by piece. The session drew to a close, with Jack feeling the aftershocks of both uncertainty and unexpected affirmation. He left the room buoyed by the frenetic energy of the confrontation, realizing he hadn't just presented ideas, he had taken ownership of his professional rebirth and challenged them to join him. He stepped into the corridor, breath still quickening, as a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration surged through him. There was a sliver of hope: they had engaged, they questioned, not just dismissed. The battle was only beginning, yet he felt less alone. What would their next steps be? Would he cement this vision or face a backlash that could crack his resolve? The next chapter waited, and Jack found himself already preparing for the next confrontation, one where he would have to confront not just his colleagues, but the deepest fears within himself. As Jack navigated the corridor, the tension from the meeting still clung to him like a heavy cloak. He replayed the confrontation with Chris in his mind, scrutinizing his own reactions. Was it courage that pushed him to challenge Chris, or was it desperation? The distinction felt blurry, yet vital. He needed to regroup. The urgent energy that surged through him was mingled with uncertainty. Was this truly the breakthrough he hoped it to be, or merely a fleeting moment of defiance? Jack ducked into a quiet break room, allowing himself a moment of solitude. He perched on a low stool, leaning over his knees, the intensity of the previous hour still hanging palpably within him. As he took a deep breath, he focused on the white walls, remembering the blank slate they signified the beginnings of new ideas waiting to be painted. Inspiration often sprang from unexpected sources, he thought. Was there something he hadn't yet seized upon, something missing from his approach? Pulling out his phone, Jack scrolled through old messages, searching for anything that might rekindle his sense of purpose. Then, an image popped up, a photo from a few months ago of his niece, Mia, clutching a crayon-drawn card. It was simple, a child's heart laid bare on paper, filled with a child's hopes and ambitions. To Uncle Jack. You can do it. She had scrawled with endearing confidence. That memory stirred something deep within him. Suddenly, he understood his professional journey was not devoid of influence from the personal. Childlike optimism did not succumb easily to doubts. The letter had reminded him that creativity thrived when there was belief, a belief he now needed to channel into his work. He stood up, invigorated by a renewed sense of clarity. Jack returned to his desk and opened his notebook, the pages filled with swirling ideas and half-formed thoughts. He needed something more tangible, a way to communicate his vision beyond the formal conference room walls. He began outlining a new initiative, informal sessions where team members could share their experiences, their visions for the workplace, and most notably, their personal stories. If joy was to flourish, it needed a foundation connections built on trust and storytelling. Resting his pen momentarily, he couldn't shake off the feeling that he was taking a risk again. Would this new step be seen as frivolity or genuine engagement? What if Chris declared it another misguided venture? The instinct to avoid potential scrutiny surfaced, yet beneath it, Jack felt defiance bubbling once more. This was his moment to leverage vulnerability for connection. Nothing could stifle innovation more than a culture devoid of authentic communication. As he developed his concept, Jack visualized Mia, imagining how she would flip through her crayons and boldly draw new possibilities. He began crafting an invitation to his team, discomfort tinged with excitement swirling around him. Would they respond with the same spirit that had accompanied his niece's heartfelt drawing? He drafted the message several times, questioning each word. He finally settled on simplicity: join me for a session to share and grow together. Let's be vulnerable, be playful, and support each other's ideas. After all, if we're going to build joy here, we must first build trust. Sending it felt both liberating and terrifying. He couldn't predict their reactions, but for once, he didn't need to. Jack had taken ownership of his vision in a way that felt remarkably different, less like a project and more like a personal mission. It would be their stories that would ignite movement. But as Jack leaned back in his chair, a gnawing sensation crept in, shadows of doubt lurking at the edges. Had he gone too far? The next morning's response could either solidify his trajectory or unravel it. He could already hear the echoes of questioning from Chris in his mind, threatening to stifle his resolve. Jack clenched his jaw, a flicker of determination coursing through him as he prepared for what was to come. Would he stand firm in the face of possible pushback, or would fear redirect his trajectory once again? The moment of truth was on the horizon, and this time, Jack knew he needed to brace himself for more than just the usual corporate critiques. This journey would require him to shatter his limitations and embrace the inherent messiness of authenticity. Jack arrived at the office with a sense of heightened awareness. The air felt charged, thick with the unspoken potential of his invitation. As he passed through the bustling open workspace, he could see glances exchanged between colleagues, whispers of curiosity igniting the atmosphere. He approached his desk, heart pounding with the anticipation of the morning's responses. Feverish thoughts raced through his mind. Had he been too forward, too bold in exposing a piece of himself? The weight of the decision loomed over him, but beneath that burden lay an undeniable sense of purpose. He was ready to expand the boundaries of how they communicated and connected as a team. The clock ticked steadily, each passing minute eroding Jack's composure. He opened his email, briefly scanning the unhealthy deluge of corporate notifications before zeroing in on the responses to his initiative. He felt a jolt of energy course through him as an email from Samantha, one of the more reserved employees, emerged. Subject: invitation to share and grow together. Jack hesitated before opening it, his thumb hovering over the mouse. A mixture of hope and anxiety knotted in his stomach as he clicked open the message. I wasn't sure what to expect from your email, but it made me think. I would love to share my experience at the last company meetup. It was a turning point for me. He blinked, reading and rereading her words. There it was, the inviting flicker of open dialogue he had sought. In a sea of apathetic responses, Samantha had ignited a spark of possibility. The more he read, the more his conviction solidified. If even one individual could feel encouraged to open up, perhaps the initiative would take flight. Encouraged by the burgeoning interest, Jack quickly typed a response, thanking her for her willingness to participate. The warmth blossoming within him was unexpected, a counterbalance to the fear that had taken residency since sending the invitation. Overwhelmed by a surge of adrenaline, he decided to reach out to others proactively. He wandered around the office, approaching colleagues sporadically, taking note of their subtle expressions. He spoke about the new initiative, framing it as a chance to share and bond over personal stories which could lead to deeper connections. The feedback varied, some were hesitant, while others smiled faintly, intrigued by the prospect. He sensed a mixture of excitement and skepticism, the same dilemma he experienced danced on their faces. During lunch, Jack sat with a few teammates at a round table. Their conversation meandered through mundane topics until he mentioned the session once more. Trevor, a quiet but perceptive colleague, leaned forward, brow furrowing. Isn't it risky, though? What if people aren't comfortable enough to share? Jack took a step back, realizing that Trevor's concern was valid. The prospect of vulnerability often carried an uncomfortable weight. But in that moment, a realization dawned upon him: discomfort was the very catalyst for growth. He found himself explaining this to the group, articulating his belief in the power of shared experiences. The response was mixed, some nodded in agreement, while others remained skeptical. Yet Jack felt emboldened, doubling down on the conversation. He articulated that vulnerability creates genuine trust, the bedrock for any transformative endeavor. He shared a glimpse of how the childhood optimism of Mia had inspired him, and that invoked a smile across the table. It was in that shared laughter he sensed the first threads of connection beginning to weave. When lunchtime wrapped, he returned to his desk buzzing. The atmosphere felt different, it pulsed with potential. Every conversation had chipped away at the walls around his colleagues, and for some, it appeared to have opened doors into deeper discussions. But as the day wound down, Jack still faced Chris's looming disapproval. The image of his boss's skeptical expression flickered through his mind like a ghost. Would his superior see the merit in such an unconventional approach? Or would he again attempt to crush Jack's burgeoning vision, stifling the little connections forming amongst his team? Determined to forge ahead, Jack prepared for the next morning's meeting, his heart clamoring in anticipation. He realized that this was not just a challenge of professional boundaries, but a test of his newfound resolve, a culmination of courage and authenticity against a backdrop of risk. As darkness enveloped the office, Jack penned a final note to himself: what if this could change everything? The labyrinth of doubt loomed ahead, but he knew that only by stepping into the unknown could he unlock the transformative potential waiting just beyond his comfort zone. And as he turned off his desk lamp, a new question echoed in his mind. Now that the groundwork was laid, how would he navigate the forthcoming confrontation with Chris? The dawn broke over the city like an omen, casting long shadows across Jack's desk. The faint hum of chatter in the office began to crescendo, mirroring the rapid beats of his heart. He could feel the momentum from yesterday's interactions swirling within him, a mix of excitement and anxiety converging to form an electric atmosphere. Steeling himself, Jack composed an email draft for Samantha, hoping to solidify the details for their session. Yet, as he typed, doubts crept back in. Would she really turn up? Was this initiative worth the trouble? These chaotic thoughts almost derailed him, but he quickly reminded himself of the connections blossoming from his invitation. It was a fragile ecosystem that needed nurturing. He glanced at his watch, only minutes from the meeting with Chris, his manager. Jack could feel apprehension slithering through his core, a sensation more potent than the fear he had faced when sending his initial email. His mentor, Chris, was a pillar of conventionality, his approach bound by rigid outcomes and predetermined measures. Jack's unorthodox initiative felt like an affront to Chris's carefully mapped territory. When he finally entered the conference room, Chris was already seated, scrolling through his tablet. Jack squared his shoulders, wearing a mask of confidence, even as uncertainty gnawed at him. He initiated small talk about recent projects, but Chris's distracted nods barely concealed his indifference. It wasn't long before Jack's courage surged. He knew he had to lean into the discomfort. "Chris, I wanted to talk to you about the initiative I proposed," Jack began, voice steady despite the internal storm. Chris looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. "Right. The what did you call it? Sharing and growing?" The tone was skeptical, almost mocking. "Yes," Jack pressed on, desperation sparking a bit of bravado. "I've received several positive emails, and I think it's resonating. People want to share their stories. It could enhance our team dynamics." Chris leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "And what evidence do you have that sharing will improve productivity?" "Stories don't drive results, Jack." The barbs of doubt hurled at him felt almost tangible. Jack inhaled deeply, grounding himself. What Chris saw as idealism, Jack experienced as a revelation, a possible transformation not only for him but for a team craving connection. "What evidence do we have that our current methods are working?" "I think we're missing something fundamental. People crave authenticity and connection. Are we really leveraging the potential of our team?" Jack's voice steadied, his conviction sharpening like a blade. As he spoke, he saw Chris's expression shift, confusion mingling with contemplation. "Do people really want to be vulnerable at work?" Chris asked, his tone softening marginally. Jack nodded vigorously. "I saw it during lunch with my colleagues yesterday. There was laughter, genuine interaction. For once, they weren't just robots spitting out figures. They were humans. And it felt good." Chris leaned forward, curiosity glinting in his eye. "You think this could improve morale?" "I believe it could revitalize our entire approach. We can elevate our project outcomes by motivating people internally." Jack's pulse quickened. He was crossing the threshold into a territory he had often avoided, challenging an established authority. Chris's gaze pierced through him as silence stretched, every beat echoing in Jack's ears. Would he dismiss Jack's boldness? Was he merely daring the universe to conspire against him? The tension was palpable, electricity coursing through both men, an intangible duel. Finally, Chris sighed, glancing away, and Jack felt the weight of battle shift. "I'll give it a chance," he said, almost reluctantly. "Organize that first session, produce evidence, not just anecdotes." Relief flooded over Jack, but something deeper unsettled him. Though he had won this skirmish, the war of belief had only just begun. Jack was now accountable, not only for his ideas but for their effectiveness. The potential for failure loomed large. As he exited the conference room, Jack remained aware of an unsettling truth: stakes had risen, and there was no turning back. He had initiated change, but now he had to prove its value. What if he faltered under the pressure of expectation? Questions echoed in his mind, a relentless chorus of doubt and possibility. In the coming days, he would need to actively cultivate Samantha's participation and harness the motivation of his colleagues to transform for real change. But as he prepared to connect with them again, another thought plagued him. What if, in this endeavor, he unlocked not only their hidden stories but also uncharted territories within himself? The maze of self-discovery awaited, twisted and intricate, yet tantalizingly close to the truth about what he truly wanted, not merely a successful initiative, but a genuine sense of belonging. And as he approached his desk, determination surged once more, igniting the burning question: could vulnerability truly become a company's greatest strength? The meetings following Jack's confrontation with Chris felt like an exhilarating roller coaster. The initial concern lay in the backlash he expected from skeptical colleagues, yet what transpired was unexpected alignment. Conversations that started with reticence began shifting into shared aspirations. Each informal session surged with enthusiasm. Team members voiced not only professional hurdles but personal stories that deepened connections. Jack felt the layers of mistrust peeling back, revealing a community longing for interaction. The first gathering commenced with a mix of trepidation and excitement. Jack welcomed everyone, extending his unfiltered enthusiasm. "Let us lay the groundwork for a new work culture," he declared. "This space is for everyone to share, to connect, and rejuvenate our professional identities." Samantha started the session by sharing her experience at a previous company, how laughter within a team fostered unity and creativity. As she spoke, Jack observed her colleagues leaning in, clearly resonating with the authenticity unfolding before them. Conversations spilled over into storytelling, laughter punctured the air, and suddenly the sterile corporate environment transformed. Over the next few weeks, Jack fiercely committed to this newfound philosophy, actively engaging in each conversation and amplifying voices that emerged. Once eclipsed by metrics, the team rushed toward genuine collaboration. Chris, initially resistant, observed changes and became an unusual supporter, often joining these informal gatherings. "I must admit," he confessed one morning, "I didn't believe this would yield results, but I'm starting to see the value in what you've created." Jack felt the weight of pride swell in him. He had spearheaded a movement that transcended what he initially conceived. Authenticity had become a corporate culture catalyst. Meeting by meeting, feedback fueled his motivation, and ideas sparked the imagination of his colleagues. Then came the quarterly review meeting, a pivotal moment as Jack braced for yet another confrontation of his intentions. During the review, Jack presented the data. Employee engagement scores had soared, productivity metrics improved, and team morale radiated through testimonials. Chris, now visibly supportive, echoed Jack's stance. "Being vulnerable enhances productivity and drives results. This approach has shifted our culture for the better." Those words of validating affirmation echoed through Jack's thoughts. Finally, he'd conquered his hesitations. He wasn't just fighting for a new process, he was advocating for a movement, a transformed ethos within the company. After the meeting adjourned, applause resonated around the room, an unexpected response that underscored his journey. He basked in solid recognition from the board and colleagues alike, individuals now inspired to pursue not just efficiency but fulfillment. Engaging with his team had established a robust foundation of trust and shared courage. They collectively dismantled outdated perceptions, bringing humanity back into the workplace. Amidst the excitement, Jack felt an echo of his journey. He stood in front of the same mirror that once bore reflections of insecurity and isolation. Today, he saw an emerging leader, a version who had learned the true weight of vulnerability and its inherent power. He had conquered barriers both in himself and among his peers, carving a path where others may follow. As Jack prepared to leave the office, glancing at the handwritten note pinned above his desk, he realized its significance had deepened. "To Uncle Jack. You can do it." Spoke volumes now. He had not only done it, he built a culture fostering courage and connection. With each step, he felt buoyed by a solid confidence, knowing he had redefined leadership from commanding authority to nurturing authentic relationships. Jack had proven something monumental not just to his colleagues but to himself. He had accomplished the transition from a solitary figurehead to a collaborative partner, cementing his legacy. Would he remember this transformation the next time the shadows of doubt loomed? Perhaps only time would tell, but for now, as he stepped out into the vibrant world beyond the office, one thing was crystal clear: he had embraced joy, reinvigorated purpose, and uncovered a profound fulfillment that would continually reshape him. Now, in the spirit of this emotional journey, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire courage and connection. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for these narratives that challenge our limits. Comment your reactions and theories about Jack's transformation in the comments below. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.